welcome on this unnaturally warm. It is warm, but it's great. No one's complaining because winter is still on its way. I am going to ask Councillor Wharehinga to open with Karakia for us. Thank you.
Morena everybody, me noi tātou. E o ngā manu, tēnei te whakamuimea tatu ki a koe mo tēnei huhui ngā mātou. Arahina mai kia au, ki te tika, ki te punu a mātou. Tuku mai te wairua tapu hei manaki, hei awhi, hei tiaki hoki a mātou. Anei mātou e tūhu nei mu I toararo, ka tuku I tēnei e noi, I runga I te mua tō mātou kaimako ora e Kaiti. Amen.
Thank you for that. Okay, good morning. Welcome to our Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan Review Committee. I am just quickly going to take us through apologies. Councillor Ria said she was going to be online, so hopefully she hops online very soon. She's unwell, so let's just keep an eye. Can someone just text her? Josh, can you text her, please? Because she sent an email to our committee last night saying she was unwell. Then let's take a little look-see. Older, Foster, Parata, is she still away?
I think she did say that she was away.
Yes, she is an apology. Let me just write that down. Ria is about online. We've got Alan. Sarah. Sarah, apology for today.
Sarah is an apology for
Sarah,
today.
an apology for today. We will miss our lovely Sarah. And that's it. So at this stage, I am going to put an apology for lateness for Councillor Ria because she indicated that she was going to join us online. Then I do have an apology for Councillor Parata and for Sarah Stevenson, our independent Commissioner.
I second.
Thank you. All in favour? 1-3 carried. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to our declaration of interest. Anyone have a declaration of interest? No? Then I'm going to take you to page 5, councillors. That is the minutes. And those minutes were sent out by the lovely Dee quite some time ago. So if I can ask you take a look, and if it is a version of the truth of what was said that day, I am very happy to take it. If there is any queries, now is your time to... Oh no, let me rephrase that. Your query time was when Dee sent out the email. You are going to get your time, don't worry, but what I'm trying to say is minutes are supposed to be adopted on the day. That's why we send it 2 or 3 weeks in advance, so you can then reply all and staff have the opportunity to respond. Moved by Councillor Wharehinga. Councillor Alder.
Yeah, just a comment, really, and you'll probably call me out of order. On page 8, questions of clarification, staff noted they are still working with iwi technicians to understand the fundamental differences between Te Manawa White and Te Poranga. Pronunciation, sorry. Is this not the time that we should be speaking to iwi and getting their input into that?
I'm going to allow the question, even though it is weird because we just are adopting minutes. Who wants to comment on that? What's that?
I said I don't think I was at. Can comment on it. I can have a...
Jocelyn, thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you, Councillor Alder. Thanks for the question. So staff are continuing to work with our treaty partners, and we've got the lovely Katarina Maka, who has been quite influential in basing in those fundamental discussions about which I think quite timely that you have asked this question, because it relates to our regional policy statement and some of those higher overarching fundamental objectives and what ultimately Te Mana o Te Wai or Kiutaki Pai in terms of the mountains to sea, and also exploring what Te Ranga o Te Taio might look in terms of aspirations across the region. So we are still working on that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Foster.
I do have a question because I
I don't think it's supposed to be Te Manawa Te Wai, is it? Because the difference...
What page? Where are you?
We're talking about what Colin was just raised before.
Yep, what page? What
Page
number?
8. Page 8, staff noted that they are still working with iwi. The fundamental differences between Te Manawa Te Wai and Tairāwhiti Te Tairāwhiti. But it's not Te Manawa Te Wai, it's the mountains, the sea version, which I can't find. Yeah, so...
Kiutaku Kitai.
Yeah, Madam Chair, but it says there, it says Q2. It doesn't say Te Manawa Te Wai.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It does have
Where?
Te Manawa Te Wai.
Oh, I'm on the paragraph on top of that. I'm at the
Kitai approach, yeah, so perhaps corrections needed to change Te Manawa Te Wai to Kiutaku.
Thank you for picking that up. And again, I'm just going to say it again, please pick this up when it is emailed. I know it's easy to say because we all missed it, but there's a reason we try and send out the minutes when it's still fresh in people's minds. Thank you for that. Thank you. I've got a mover in Councillor Wharehinga, a seconder in Councillor Foster. All in favour? Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Ria. Lovely to see you. Okay, councillors, we are going to shimmy on to our action register. What is on our action register today? It's still in progress. It's the regional policy state early engagement. We'll talk about that later. Governance work plan, leave of absence. Do we have acknowledgements and tributes that I have missed? No one told me anything. Public input and petitions. No extraordinary business. No notice of motion. Look at me gliding through it. No adjourned business. Okay, let's get to the nitty-gritty stuff. Page 11. Good morning, Jocelyn.
Yes.
Should I hand over to you to open this paper for us and then we take it from there?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. And thank you. I appreciate today. We've got quite a bit to get through, but it's all really great stuff. So thank you. So our first paper relates to the workshop, which you attended, and thank you for your attendance last month. Which pertain to the provisions around activities and beds of rivers and lakes. So we're bringing this report to you, to the committee today, as options and findings from that workshop. So as you know, this work forms part of the freshwater planning program, one of two parts. The first part is what we're speaking about in this paper, which is the drafting of provisions which apply to freshwater related activities, as well as the second part, which is the creation and drafting of 7 catchment plans, which the work's being done in parallel, and we will hear later from Yannick, who will run us through the progress of the development of the Uawa Catchment Plan. So the activities in the beds of lakes and rivers is the first chapter to be presented to this committee, and it will be followed by the riparian margins and wetlands chapter, which we have a workshop on this afternoon. So under the Resource Management Act, regional and in our case unitary authorities have the responsibility of controlling the use of land in the beds of rivers and lakes, which includes the control of activities in, on, under, or over the beds of rivers and lakes. And that includes the control of the entry of water into or the discharge of water from any lake or river. It also manages the control of planting or removal of vegetation in, on, under, or under the bed of rivers and lakes. So activities that are commonly managed in beds of rivers and lakes include the placement, maintenance and removal of structures like culverts, bridges and pipes, excavation, reclamation or deposition of material, flood protection works, vegetation clearance, riverbed extraction, the realignment of or channel works, stream crossings, and construction of erosion control or bank stabilization structures. It's a large section managed under the Resource Management Act, which is section 13 that directly manages and regulates activities in the beds of rivers and lakes, which basically says that no person in a manner that contravenes a rule in a regional plan or a proposed plan may use enter onto or disturb the bed of a river or lake unless the activity is expressly allowed. So that means that unless the activity is permitted, it requires resource consent, which is the case with most of these activities. So the main environmental effects considered and regulated for these activities are the effects on ecosystem health and habitat, the effects on tangata whenua values, impacts on fish passage and aquatic life, effects on flooding and erosion, and also cumulative effects, including sedimentation. So those activities often interact with other sections of the Resource Management Act, like water takes, also discharges, which interplay really well, and we will be seeing that through the subsequent drafting, and you'll see these with upcoming chapters. So we workshopped last month with yourselves, with this committee and our commissioners, options around those drafting of provisions. Thank you. And this paper seeks for you to endorse those findings and to endorse our drafting team to continue with provisions. So I introduced as well Sarah Thompson. I'm sure you've seen her before, who is our technical expert here, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, I am going to open the floor. There's a lot in here, but I'm also feeling calm that we workshop through this.
Yes.
Because sometimes I see we're going to talk about something and there's so much in there, but the fact that we've workshopped it and we've come to an arrangement which we think is the way we want to go, make me a little bit calmer. So it is a big topic, it is, because we don't discuss this every second week, and it has an impact on people's lives and how they operate, and also what our environment looks like. So it is really important, but I'm really glad we did workshop this. So I'm going to open the floor and then ask Councillor Ria. Good morning.
Morena, Your Worship. Morena, everyone, and my apologies. I have bugs from little children that I'm looking after currently, so hence why I'm here on the Zoom. Sorry, I'm just going to pre-apologise because I didn't attend the workshop. Then probably some of these questions that I have may get answered and have already been discussed. So I was just wanting to know, in addition to the 6 areas, when the paper goes out to iwi, are we asking iwi how they would like to be engaged on each of those 6 topics? Anything from notification of works or minor works and more formal engagement for culturally significant sites?
Through you, Your Worship, there is ongoing iwi engagement just through the development through the review of these sections. There will be further opportunities into the future as well. In relation to outstanding water bodies and areas of cultural significance or greater significance than other areas, that's a piece of work that we are sort of right in the middle of, and just refining our the attributes, I think we should call them, to then go out and seek thoughts and feelings on or almost nominations of areas or awa that are of significance to any particular group.
Just to flag, from a Māori holistic worldview, all rivers and lakes and water bodies contribute to oranga or living or breathing. All of those are considered significant, all water bodies, so all rivers, all lakes are considered significant. So I'm just going to flag that for you because that will come up. Modified water courses, are those just rivers?
Through you, Your Worship, modified water courses are generally a stream rather than a river that has been modified for the purposes of mostly land drainage, so straightened to ensure the the speed of the water can move out of an area quickly. I guess the definition of modified does include things like structures that have been placed in a waterway, but it doesn't, there is a good definition in the plan, but that is a definition that we do actually want to tighten up as well, just to make sure it's really clear.
Yeah. For example, would that be like kōpua whakapata?
Yeah, yes, through your worship. Yes, that's it has been straightened and realigned, and there's also quite a significant amount of hard protection structural culverting that has taken place through kōpua. So yes, that would most likely mean the definition.
Okay. On page 23, do the recommendations in the TRMP align with the current global consenting? The council has to undertake work on drains and watercourses.
Sorry, I'm
just noting too, on page 24, there's a reference to ensuring effects are managed. I'm also interested on how those habitats are accessed and what mitigation would occur prior to work to minimise those effects.
Can you just stick to one? The first question you asked were on page 24. Can you just show me what number?
Page 23. Do the recommendations in the TRMP align with the current global consenting the council has to undertake work on drains and watercourses?
Through you, your worship, we do, through developing these options, we met with our Rivers, Land, Coastal and Drainage team, and we have discussed these provisions with them. We discussed whether they saw benefit in having a code of practice or whether their global consent covered everything. And they were, there's been pros and cons to both. The code of practice, you do the work up front. The global consent, you have to revisit every 10 years or whatever, however long the duration is. It came down to personal preference, and the team were open to either. They weren't too worried. It cover, sorry, your second question was, does it cover the environmental effects? Sorry.
Does it cover what would happen prior to work to minimise effects? I do see that there are things in place to monitor the effects, but I didn't see anything that made provision to actually the pre-assessment of works in order to mitigate at the outset, rather just monitoring after it's done.
That is something that I can take back to the team, and we'll just make sure that's noted.
Okay. Gravel extractions, page 19, number 17, sentence 3. So that's page 19, number 17, sentence 3. How gravel extractions done carefully to minimise effects on significant habitats. Can you explain what the definition in the TRMP of a significant habitat is?
Yeah, through you, your worship. In the current TRMP, we have a schedule. It's a schedule board body. There's schedules 15, 16, 17. I think it goes all the way to G17 or 18. Those are the ones that have been identified, and they are generally a long stretch of a river or an area. When a consent application comes in, that's the first flag for a processing planner. However, if there are any wetlands or any other sites of significance or things that have been mapped in the plan, that's a trigger to the consent planner to go out on site and assess the area themselves, and they'll most of the time take a technical expert such as an ecologist or one of the science team out on site to assess the site before making any decisions.
I would like to include at this point to also give mention that the ecologists, the two specialists that you just mentioned, would not be able to assess the cultural value of that significant site. So considering that moving forward when those works occur. Finally, this is just a comment, and I'm not going to repeat it for every single paper today, but it is relevant to every single paper today. And I just am really emphasising since the beginning of the TRMP, I've yet to see any ki uta ki tai key features. I do support the further development of the 6 areas in this paper. However, I do expect to see a holistic, Māori-informed worldview is reflected in all future documents, including following the key features of ki uta ki tai. 1, a holistic ecosystem approach. 2, te ao Māori worldview. 3, integrated catchment management. 4, iwi involvement. 5, community involvement. 6, sustainable resource use. And 7, monitoring indicators, with the final one being alignment with legal frameworks. These are the indicators that make the document ki uta ki tai, and a lot of those indicators are not currently present in any of the papers that are being presented to us. I just want to reiterate that I've also heard Commissioner Matheson comment in previous meetings about the lack of ki uta ki tai, Māori worldview and holistic methods being used within the papers. And I'm saying this every meeting now, that the partnership that it takes, whether it's ki uta ki tai, whether it is te oranga o te taiao, the partnership that it takes is engaging iwi at the planning phase, not going to them at the reviewing phase, not writing the document and then asking them to insert where they think mātauranga Māori is. It kind of implies in this paper too that the section on te ao Māori is kind of the be all and end all of kaupapa Māori within the TRMP document. That is not ki uta ki tai or te oranga o te taiao foundation. That needs to be interwoven throughout the document from beginning to end. So it's a great piece of work. There's a lot of work going into this, and I do not deny that. I actually commend everybody that all of the reports today, so much work has gone into it. But I do want to flag that in terms of ki uta ki tai, te oranga o te taiao, and integrating Māori holistic worldview into these documents that are being presented to us, that it's just not there. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Jean.
Tēnā tātou, through you, Your Worship. I tautoko katoa, your kupu, Councillor Ria, and koira pēti tahi o ngā wāhanga tino Uawa. I just, as I said, I agree with everything that you've said, and probably one of the things that I just want to clarify is we engaged our iwi partners at the outset. What we have seen, particularly in recent times where there has been a lot more ability to lean in and collaborate, is that momentum, and what we're up against now is a condensed time frame, I guess, at this end of the process. And I think important just to acknowledge that we have been reaching out for 2+ years on how we do it. I'm not saying we're perfect, but I think what it has highlighted, and as I've mentioned in recent times where we have had some increased capacity, and I think the mahi that Tina Parau is doing, and the point that she often raises around the difference between technical work versus engagement, has been a really good point of clarification, and I think not only for council, but taking the way that sort of Te Aitanga Mahaki is approaching their process in partnering in terms of regional planning matters and technical stuff. It's brought a real, I guess, coherence and understanding to our ability, and albeit hindsight, and we are in a condensed space now in terms of doing the work. I think there's a really good tauira there for what allows us, and I think the reflection for council is sustainably moving forward for the governors now and in the future is for us to be able to include and achieve. And I feel what Councillor Ria has outlined is a foundational standard. At the moment, it feels as though, given the nature of capacity, capability constraints, that it is a sort of a above and a beyond and an anomaly. But I think it's important that we understand, I guess, the current settings, the historical settings, the current settings that we've been navigating to get to this. And I really just want to reinforce that we have attempted early to reach out, and I guess what I'm just highlighting is that when we have the right capacity and technical knowledge that to bridge and broker that relationship between our partners in the work that council's doing, we can see some real success. And as per, I guess, the paper, we will still continue right up until timeframes allow to ensure that we're pushing and fighting for the position of all of those items that you shared in your kōrero. And yeah, I just felt important to acknowledge we have made an effort and an early effort, and I guess that sort of dynamic around capacity, capability has always been a challenge, but I'm glad it's been tabled in this fashion, because it's good for committees like this and our governors to get a true appreciation for the breadth and requirement for our treaty partnership commitments to be able to be given, I guess, effect to and expressed in a way that's satisfactory. Kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koe, Jean. Just, I suppose, in addition, in terms of community engagement, that Te Tairāwhiti since COVID also has a huge network of kaitiaki taiao, Māori kaitiaki taiao, through the Jobs for Nature program throughout the district. They are the people who are working on the whenua, in the waterways, on the rivers, doing the planting. And so I suppose for future engagement, once we hit the community, I would like to help to organise to bring those kaitiaki to offer their kaitiaki lens to this space as well. Tēnā koutou.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Jean, as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm speaking on behalf of Sarah as well, but she's an apology today, so she's just got a couple of comments. And both Sarah and I agree with where the option framework is going. That's looking good. I think what it does raise, and thank you, Councillor Ria, because you've picked up on the concern both Commissioner Stevenson and I have, just from a government's point of view, as to how the various work streams are progressing. And at the moment, they seem to be progressing sort of independently of each other, and there's no good linkage between them. And particularly in, say, regards to the activities in river and lake beds. On the agenda, we've now got draft regional policy statement provisions. And there's some good work in there, really good work, but there's no link. We can't see a link between what's in here and what's in the regional policy statement, objectives and policies. So what I'm looking for, and we'll perhaps come to it later on in the agenda, is a bit more of a discussion about how these things are linking together. We're getting provisions sort of marching ahead of this, in some cases, the analysis. We've got provisions like this, activities and beds of rivers and lakes, moving ahead of the regional policy statement. And that's in the draft RPS, there's some good, strong objectives and policies. But I can't see any link which says where you're heading in this particular thing ties in with what's happening with the regional policy statement. So we've got things slightly out of joint here, I think, and maybe that's a conversation we can have later on. But otherwise, in terms of the general approach, that's looking good, but I would have looked to have seen something in this paper that says, here's where the draft RPS is going in terms of this issue, here are the objectives and policies. This is in the line or is slightly different, and we're going to have to change track a little bit on that. So that was really my overall comment. And I think that comes to one of Sarah's comments, that she's not seeing it's clearly, what's been proposed here is clearly anchored in the National Policy Statement freshwater framework. So of course the draft RPS is doing that for us. So that's the link we seem to see where that's going. On a technical point, Sarah's just raised about whether structures include legacy assets. So those are existing structures that are in there. She couldn't quite pick it up, and I had a quick read as well, and I couldn't quite pick it up. So maybe just a comment on all those unconsented culverts and bridges and various things that are sitting there, and what the general approach to those is. I think we touched on it at the workshop, but I'm not sure we sort of quite nailed it, or I couldn't quite see it coming through in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just a response to that technical question would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Yeah.
And so we, that's something that we've noted.
Yes.
There's some thinking happening behind the scenes, but yes, my apologies, those thoughts haven't made it into the decision paper, but we can bring that back at a later date if you would like us to.
Yep. And I think it's really just around, through you, Your Worship, sort of what sort of consenting pathway you were thinking in terms of those different things. So some of them will be strategic, some are just happen to be there, some are causing problems, some aren't, and we're just looking at what's the framework to take that forward. Thank you.
So I'm just trying to get some clarity here for myself. On page 14, we are talking about the recommendations, which has, number one, is the additional feedback, which we are getting from committee members today. And then we talk about preferred options. What I just heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, did you say you want to bring it back? Are you saying, I'm just trying to say, is it our intention to adopt this today with additional feedback? Is that what we're aiming at today?
Through Your Worship, if that is something that the committee would like, we can bring an amendment or an addition to this.
That's why this provision 1 is in the recommendation.
Yes,
Good.
that's how I read.
Good. No, that's perfect. So you're taking note of all the additional information, which will then be incorporated into whatever preferred option we go with. Ka pai. Okay, committee members. Cranston.
I'm not a committee member, but I'm interested. We know we've got thousands of culverts around the area, and we know that it's problematic for us to keep them all clean and that. Through the consultation period, it was actually suggested that there is something there that the farmers can take on, and it actually came through catchment groups as well. I just wondered if we made any progress of that, and it even came to an issue of perhaps being able to supply a rotor jetter or something on a mobile basis, that the farmers could actually take care of some of the culvert clearing themselves, and there seemed to be a willingness to do that. I just wondered if we had made any progress of that, because it was quite a strong discussion point. And if it was, would it need to be recognised as a permitted activity?
Through Your Worship, that's that's not a conversation I've been part of, but I'm looking to Tim whether that's a utilities, some sort of agreement, but you're absolutely right, it would be good to note it as a permitted activity if that's the appropriate.
So Tim, what we are asking is, there were some discussions through our consultation where farmers might be the ones to open up culverts or clean culverts, or the community, and Councillor Cranston were just asking, is this something that we progressed? Or because if it needs to be a permitted activity in our plan, otherwise farmers are going to do that, and then we're going to slap them with legislation or stuff that I'm not sure if it's...
No objections to permitting that, but the only issue I'd have is what sort of equipment they use to do it. So if they've got their own
safety stuff,
more damage to the if they've got their own digger, for instance, they might use that instead of a shovel, and that actually takes the nib off, and then all of a sudden you've got a $15,000 issue rather than a $400 clearing. Yeah.
There was discussion about having a council rotator or something that was out there on a mobile basis that could sort of do a run, because that's the right equipment to use. So rather than them coming in with what equipment they had available, with a big digger that they thought could do the job, and it, whoops, actually having something that was more focused on doing the right job.
Yeah, but we're in New Zealand and people use what they've got. So that's especially our rural community. So
have the council got?
Well, we use contractors to do our clear out.
Well, I want to give a little bouquet to those contractors. 6:30 a.m. this morning in Matokitoki Valley. They were digging our drains and clearing culverts. That's not too bad. Yeah, 6:30 a.m. That's pretty. Anywho.
So through
yes.
we did talk about that. It's on page 13 of the agenda about the flood management and response, and for the workshop we indicated a preference for trying to find some ways you can sort of do that pre-work to manage flooding. So it's in there, and we're just looking for the detail to come through in the plan change in due course. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussions, queries? Now is your time. So you will see, committee members, that our recommendations are on page 14. I do know that we have given a lot of feedback already at the workshop, which is great. So if you've got any additional feedback, you've got until the end of today to email Jocelyn. If you remember something afterwards, or you know, sometimes we do think of something later. But if there are no more questions, I don't want to let it hang unnecessarily. Do I have a mover for...
I'm happy to move it with workshop that does allow for additional feedback down the track. So you know, I'm quite comfortable with the preferred options that we've come to. Like I said, we did with workshopped it quite intensely to get to this stage. So we all agreed at the time, so I don't have any reason not to disagree with it now. So I'm happy to move it.
So I've got a mover in Councillor Foster, a seconder in absolutely. Let's go for it. Let's go for it.
It's going to come through the meeting all the way on, and I apologise. But I would like the recommendation in part 2, approve that for the purpose of developing draft plan provisions and draft section 32.
Happy to amend. Jill, you've got that? Alan, can you just repeat that?
And so number 2, table 1 above, for the purposes of developing draft plan provisions and draft section 32 report.
Draft section 32 report. Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Committee members, the mover happy with that? Yep. Seconder obviously is happy with that. That's great. Any other questions or queries? If not, I'll put it to the floor. All in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jasmine. Okay, let's move to our next paper. So, permission, welcome, hot seat. Kaiti Masterplan, page 51.
Thank you. committee and also Commissioner Matheson. So this paper has presented a progress update on the Kaiti Masterplan, which is part of the future development strategy implementation and the first of the master plans on the program. Now, you'll see throughout the paper a progress update having been given. However, what we are seeking today from this committee is a little bit more time to allow for the engagement and the collaboration and co-design of the master plan with our team partners. And I think it's been acknowledged, thank you, Jean, and also thank you, Councillor Ria, we're in this balance of keeping up or trying to uphold statutory timeframes, but also for the work to fully acknowledge what we're trying to say and to include the collective voice. And with this particular piece of work, we have to acknowledge and recognize that our treaty partners, particularly Ngāti Oneone and Rome Whakata, we have to do as the Aroha needs. And so I know that we were speaking with Katerina as well, and working with her and continuing to acknowledge the priorities that they have and working on hopefully providing us with a little bit more time to open up that engagement and discussion. So we have put forward to you 3 options today. The first one is for this committee to accept it as it is now, and that is categorically not a full draft. The second option is for this committee to allow our team until the end of June to progress and give us that opportunity to continue sharing the draft with our mana whenua partners, our town and our treaty partners, which would then allow us to take the final master plan to the 31 July Sustainable Tairāwhiti meeting, which coincides with the planned day of their change mahi as well. That is our preferred option, and the third option we have presented to this committee is for this work to be paused. However, that would mean that the master plan work would be deferred until next year. Thank you. And just want to give props to Vibhishan, who's been doing an amazing job, and he is our technical expert here.
Vibhishan, you want to add anything before I open the floor?
More than that. Thank you, through your chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say, at this stage, we really want to incorporate the voice of our tangata whenua, and that's why we've been quite reluctant to produce a draft at this stage. We want that to reflect the voice of our partners. So that's why you don't see a full draft in front of you, but there are some key elements where we've made some progress, which are some indicators to then build upon as we look forward to the rest of the draft. So yeah, welcome your feedback today, and thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go with Councillor Wharehinga and then Councillor Ria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And so I'm not going to be critical of the request. I'm going to be more critical about how the request has been worded and it's come to us, because if we look at the recommendation, it's a recommendation where we have to make a decision on whether to continue to finalise the Kaiti Master Plan or allow for more time. But if we go to the actual time frame, you're only asking for like another 3-4 weeks. I mean, it's like, I don't feel like that kind of, it sounds like it's so much bigger, what you guys are requesting, when actually it's only an extension of a few weeks. I really think that this could have been an operational decision, and you guys have just said, hey, we're pushing out this like another month or so, and then it's going to roll over, you know? So I'm a little bit, in a comms space where every word that we write in our reports ends up being a comms line. I'm a little bit worried about that, worried about that part, because it could have actually been, in terms of its the real nature of what's been asked here for, the report could have been phrased in that way. Also, it feels a little bit contradictory too, because if I take us to paragraph like 44 onwards, all of the stuff under the treaty compass, it says we've got really good engagement with our EV here. You know, like we're doing this, this, and this. We have this live tracker, etc., etc. If I take us to 48 to 51, it says, you know, like things like specifically paragraph 51, we're yet to reach an agreed approach, but you know, we've got this commitment to continue reaching out. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, and to me, the recommendation is at odds with the contextualization inside of the paper. We're doing all these positive things, you know, which again, I really agree with. But I just really want to kind of be realistic about the thing that we're supporting you guys to do today, which is just push the draft out to 3-4 weeks time. And then the final coming to us another 3 or 4 weeks after that. It's not like we're asking to defer months and months on end. That's my personal take on it. I'm comfortable with us waiting, and it would be, well, for me again, I'm comfortable with us waiting, because we would make this decision if we decontextualize this and said that it wasn't an iwi group that we're waiting for. We would 100% wait for a rural community if they needed a little bit extra time. We would 100% wait for a community of interest, regardless of where they are or where they're from or the nature of whether they're rural or urban. We would allow them this time. So yeah, that's where I went to when I read this paper. 100% support us waiting for our community. But the story inside of our paper and the recommendation seems a little bit at odds for me. So yeah, that's my piece there, Your Worship.
Councillor Ria and Councillor Alder, thank you.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm really supportive of what Josh has, Councillor Wharenga has just said. I'm also supportive of extending the date to give time for tangata whenua engagement to occur. I do believe that without that really meaningful tangata whenua engagement, then, as I said in the first paper, the intention of Ki Tiki Tai and Te Taiao cannot be fully achieved without that engagement. So yes, I am very supportive of what Councillor Wharenga has said. I did have a couple of questions. What classifies a community hub?
It's a place of gathering, a place in a community where it's also a focal point where people do, there is interest in a community to gather in a particular area. So it's also the movement of people within a particular community. And we've identified those as hubs.
Given that interpretation, as a person who is in Kaiti every single day, the Winery Road shops are not included as a community hub. It has a cafe, it's constantly used, there's a Foursquare, takeaways and laundry, there's constant traffic, both vehicles and foot traffic. So I was wondering why the Winery Road shopping area was not included as a community hub.
Thank you for that, through you, Your Worship. It's a bit of a lower intensity, but I do take your point and we'll consider that as we're improving the draft.
I just wanted to make note again about page 61 and reference to Maihi Kaora National Māori Housing Strategy. This constantly comes across in the Kaiti plan is key to informing improved housing outcomes for Māori through intensification. I really would urge the council to engage with Toitu Tairāwhiti, given that they've been providing Māori housing in our district for over 5 years now and are currently developing 160 home papakainga next to the hospital. They have a really good grip on the current Māori housing situation in Aotearoa, and there may be areas or because they meet with every single whānau and understand the needs of those whānau and the wants of those whānau. So understanding intensification at a ground level. So I just I understand the necessity for the Mahi Kāora and using that national standard as a foundation, but I would also like to note the expertise which sits within Te Tairāwhiti around Māori housing and the situation of Māori housing and the aspirations also of Māori housing within our district.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ria. Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to move option 2. I'd also like to thank Vivashan for the report, and I think it's a great piece of work coming together well. I've witnessed the engagement, or some of the engagement, and I think that has gone very well, the bits I've seen. So, yeah, I'd leave it at that. I move option 2.
Option 2 and all the other recommendations on the front. Yep, thank you. Alan and then Larry, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and yes, I just will reiterate what the rest of the councillors have said. Brings to mind a cheese ad, some things take time, and you just have to leave them to take time. From what I've heard around the table in regards to Kaiti, it's one of those areas where it seems to be quite different to the other 3. The other 3 to me seem to be sort of quite technical sort of planning type ones with community engagement, and those seem to be quite sensible. They sort of follow a good path. Kaiti seems to be quite different, and I think there'll be great value in just leaving it to take its time to carry on with the engagement. It's reached, sounds like it's reached a good position, and that should continue. I want to put forward that, as far as I can see, there's no problem with the other 3 master plans and the urban plan change progressing. With Kaiti can sit there, clearly signal that it's work in progress, and it can catch up with the plan change through a variation once it's ready to go. So I don't see there's any risk in terms of timeframes here, and I would just perhaps recommend that if Kaiti's going to take another 6 months or whatever, that's fine. Carry on with the plan change. Signal very clearly in the plan change in the Section 32 report as to why Kaiti is sitting and working its own way through, and then it becomes very clear, and through the process, Kaiti will catch up with the rest of the urban plan change. So I don't see any issues with this, and I'm happy that the recommendation doesn't have a time frame on it. The time frame is what it takes, and that's fine. So I'm happy with that. Just one other matter. When I see that some of the master plan provisions are likely to get into the urban plan change in terms of rules or objectives, policies, things like that in due course. Is that correct?
I think we hope that the master plan will at least be completed so that it informs the picture of those relative areas in the draft plan change itself. However, as we haven't reached an outcome for it, it's quite challenging to do that.
Yes.
So what we've looked at is some of the issues that we've identified through the master planning process. We're working with the plan change to understand that, so that that's reflected to some extent. However, the outcomes will need some time as we're developing that. The future point, yeah.
So through you, Your Worship, there was suggestions in the master plans about intensification in specific areas. So I'd expect to see maybe that comes through as a policy in the plan change at least, or some sort of provisions around that. And on that, then it would just be good later on when we get the master plans and the draft plan change together, that we have a nice table which sort of says how these things have been implemented, whether they're doing their community actions, their stuff in the plan, or whatever is going to happen. So we'd like to keep on track. But otherwise, I'm very happy. Thank you.
Good. Anyone else wanted to speak?
Just the recommendations that's been moved, there's 2 options here, so I gather that we're going for or allow more time for Tairāwhiti engagement to occur, so that's an option that we're taking. Yeah, well that's It's part of 2, yeah, option, yeah, okay, right.
All good?
Yep, sweet. The other thing I just wanted to get a bit of a query on is on page 61, and it's the same paragraph 41 that Councillor Ea said, but at the end of it, it's got potential changes of Papakāinga rules, and I'd just like to know what they might be.
So we're expecting after this process, and we're able to understand if there's any provisions relating to Papakāinga, that could also inform some of the provisions in the plan itself. So we haven't managed to get to that point as yet as well.
Right.
So once this master plan is developed, and if there's any content that can support that, that is relevant to provisions in the plan, we will look for that to inform that piece of work.
Okay, cool. I see Shane's got his hand up too.
All good? Shane. Shane, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I just thought I'd add to what Vivishan was saying there in terms of, and the question from Commissioner Allen, in terms of the urban plan change, the engagement that we're having with tangata whenua at the moment, and particularly led by Tina Purau, we think will hopefully come up with some provisions that we use the term Papakāinga, but that's a general term that we're using because we've been told by a number of representatives of iwi that traditional Papakāinga isn't really what we're talking about. That was housing around marae, but what we're generally using the term is Māori housing forms. And so what we're hopeful is that the plan change will come up with something that will also be able to inform the master plan, as Vivishan was saying. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions or queries? I absolutely support our approach where we need to remember we are creating a plan to reflect what people who live in that area want and what they need and what they value. So if we make plans and we don't have that input, we are not really serving the community there. So I really support our staff to make sure we get that input and we reflect what the community there wants. So I'm really supportive of that. Any last questions or queries? Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. As the councillor who was very passionate about us getting the Kaiti master plan on board, I do want to thank staff, but I also do want to remind us around this table that yes, we do need to take time to land these things properly, but we do need to also be conscious of the fact that Kaiti has always been the last cab off the rank. So, you know, we do want to give that time, but when the time comes to be able to put in the effort in order to be able to bring the progress on the master plan up to the same speed as everyone else. This is why I was really passionate about getting this out there first, because I knew it would take a bit of time, but it needs to land also at the same time as these first master plans. Not at the same time as the last master plan we do, but at the same time as these first lot of master plans. So just wanted to caution us on that. Thank you.
Are there any last questions of clarity?
Through Your Worship, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wharehinga, for that. And the Kaiti Master Plan, thank you, has been, that's why we've been able to progress it before the other three. And this is a question for you, Commissioner Matheson. If with the work progressing, as you know, the Elgin City Centre and Aokuni Master Plan work is progressing. It's at a more premature stage at this point. However, it's in Vivishan is working in that space. Would you recommend a similar approach to the other three as well?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. If you find that one of them is just needing that bit more time, then I would suggest, yeah, if time's the essence to get the urban plan change going, then you can use the variation process to catch up. And I think if that's well explained, then there's no issues there. It's not that one's wrong, bad, or otherwise. It's just they take a bit more time because there's issues to work through.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, any more questions or queries? Councillor Alder, do you want a right of reply because you moved it?
No, I'm happy with it so far. Thank you.
Who is the seconder?
Second.
Councillor Foster. We can have a seconder here. All in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Viveshan. Thank you, Jocelyn. Let's break for a lovely coffee and we'll... Okay, councillors, I take you to page 82, and that is our report on the approval to engage and seek feedback on a draft regional policy statement. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you.
Got a quorum?
Yes, Aubrey's here.
Oh, Aubrey.
Through your worship, thank you, and good morning, everyone. So, bringing a regional policy statement to you marks a milestone in the strategic stewardship of our region and also our TRMP program. As you're aware, a regional policy statement isn't simply a statutory document under the Resource Management Act. It provides the direction for how plan changes progress, and particularly in our case, the TRMP. And it also supports integrated resource management across Tairāwhiti. So a regional policy statement sets the long-term vision. It identifies the region's significant resource management issues, and it provides a unifying policy framework to guide decision-making. A regional policy statement speaks directly to what we value most as a region, the resilience of our natural environment, the sustainability of our land and our why, and the well-being of our communities now and for future generations to come. It must give effect to national direction, it must honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and it must weave tangata whenua values into the heart of regional governance, and in doing so provide certainty to our communities, our businesses, and our treaty partners about how we intend to manage our most pressing environmental challenges and opportunity. So today we begin to lay the groundwork for that future. Preliminary discussions with our community through the work in this process and by our wonderful team have indicated a general support for the direction of the regional policy statement, and the form it is presented to you today in draft needs now to be enhanced, firstly through engagement and consultation with our communities, and second as a basis for ongoing engagement, the collaboration and co-drafting with our treaty partners. So today we're seeking this committee and our commissioners' endorsement with regards to the next steps in how this committee wishes for us to progress work. Thank you, and I'll also introduce to you Helen Marr, who has been our lead and our subject matter expert. If you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you. Helen, did you want to add anything before we open the floor for questions?
I'll just briefly, I'll take the paper as read, obviously, but just to reiterate, what we've got is the result of a lot of work that's gone on over the last couple of years, a lot of technical work, a lot of discussions with committee, and this is a milestone of saying, well, here is everything you said, our best stab at writing it down in the form of a regional policy statement. The next step is to engage, as Jocelyn said, and we've given you two options in the paper to do that right now, or to delay it a bit and set out the pros and cons, the costs and benefits of both of those two options for your consideration.
Okay. Alan, guide us through. Guide us through what we've discussed or what we need to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will commence by commending officers and consultants to what's been drafted in the RPS. As I said earlier, I have reviewed it and I found it very, very good. There was only one chapter I think I sent back saying I was totally confused with that one, but that one's now restructured and hits the mark. I hadn't seen the introductory sections to the RPS, and I was very pleasantly surprised. I think I've spoken earlier about various things. I wanted to feel a Tairāwhiti perspective in what comes before the committee. And from my point of view, I was reading that and going, oh yeah, yes, I get that. That's what we've talked about around the table. That's my understanding. Those are the issues. Those are the directions people are wanting to go. That's where this council's wanting to go. So again, that first introductory part I found very helpful in framing what then comes in the objectives and policies later on. So I think it would be, as I said before, it's probably come a little bit cold for the rest of the committee, but I think there's some really good stuff in the chapters, and I'm wondering whether it's some value in Helen just taking us through, giving us a little overview of each chapter, what it's about, where it's come from, just so that there's a bit of foundation, just to remind the committee as to where we've come from and why this is hitting the mark.
That would be lovely. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I have no technical or other comments on the RPS, so I found that fine.
Thank you. I've got the wrong glasses for reading. Join the club.
Do you want to get the right glasses?
I think I'll manage. Your arm's long enough. I'll sit further back. But thank you for those comments. The team has worked really hard on making the regional policy statement region specific, and that is actually a bit of a challenge when we've got really directive national policy telling us sometimes very, very specifically what we must do. How do we give that the Tairāwhiti flavour? And so the team's done a really great job of weaving in Council's other strategic planning documents, Tairāwhiti 2050, economic plans, and also speaking with our community and internal staff as well, just to make sure that we've really brought in all of those threads. And working with the iwi partners that we've been able to engage with, added another really important layer of flavour into there to make sure that it's reflecting their aspirations as well. So I am proud of the work the team's done on that. It's a big document, and it's obviously difficult to engage with. Most of the, each chapter has got explanations and principal reasons, and that's a great place to go to for contextual information if you're wondering the why of things. We deliberately left those quite wordy, so they had a lot of information. So that information's drawn from the issues and options papers that you've seen previously and the technical reports. And that is intended to give people a bit of structure because it's a big document and it's dealing with a lot of stuff. So moving into the chapter, the easiest way to engage with the content is these linkage tables that the team's put together, which is intended to show how the provisions fit together. So, and to show that there's a flow from the objectives, which set out the goal, what we're trying to achieve, through the policies, which should define the how we're going to achieve, and the methods, which is the what we're going to do to achieve it. And so those linkage tables are a great place to go if you're just wondering, well, how are we going to achieve kaitiakitanga? So the introductory chapter does exactly what it says on the tin. It tells you where you are, what you're doing, and how you use the plan. Tangata Whenua chapter ought to reflect Tangata Whenua's goals, aspirations, and how the council intend to work with them. We've used the Treaty Compass framework to help draft that up, with information we've received from Tangata Whenua through RPS engagement, but also through other engagements. So Ariel, who's here in the room, has done a great job of going through previous submissions, pulling out what's been said to council in the past, looking at those iwi management plans, so that this reflects what we've already been told. What it doesn't yet reflect is have we got it right from Tangata Whenua's perspective,
and we're really, really keen to have that conversation to make, develop this further and make sure it reflects Tairāwhiti. Integrated management chapter is the next chapter, which is a key one. Obviously, a regional policy statement's purpose is integrated management. All the chapters ought to fit together, and we think they do. Integrated management chapter is those common threats that you'll see throughout. So it's things like, what are our priorities for restoration? Are dunes, wetlands, riparian areas and erodible land, and making that really clear. Are we taking a precautionary response? What does that mean in this region? What does Kaiti mean here, and how does that reflected in the plan? So if you want to read one chapter to get a flavour, integrated management chapter would be my recommendation on that. It's quite a chunky one because it's trying to draw together the facts. I'm happy to pause if people have got questions. Another key chapter that connects things is the climate change chapter. Kelsey?
Just give us page numbers as you go along.
Apologies. I've skipped ahead. The next chapter in your word is air, but climate change. I'll come back to it when I come across it, but I just wanted to highlight that it is an integrating chapter as well, because obviously climate change touches everything, all parts of the region, all parts of the RPS.
318.
Kelsey's worked closely on that chapter with the Council's climate change team. So this reflects Council's climate change strategies and the work programs that they've already got in place. And so you won't see climate change mentioned 900 times. We've tried to incorporate it into that chapter. Put a lens over that. Which is good. Yes. Now I'll duck back to page 109, which is the air chapter. Air can be a bit of a dry topic, air quality. You can't, see the little particles, but it's really important for health. And it's really important for visibility of our night sky, and we've tried to reflect both of those things. They're both really important for communities. Tairāwhiti has designated airshed around the urban area of Clifton, because air quality is sometimes poor there, so there's a focus there. But there's about improving the air quality and a specific focus on making sure that we're getting into them, making sure we're monitoring that where it matters most, which is where the people are who are having the health problems because of that poor air quality. Outside that, it deals with issues like dust, spray drift, and visibility of the night sky, because that's an important component of the nature of this region and goes to connection to place. The coastal environment is the next chapter, 111.
111, what's that on our computer?
What's that?
She's going through the linkages, but coastal environment chapters 239.
Oh, sorry, I must have a different page number.
No, we're just on
You're going through the
summaries.
linkages. We're going, yeah.
It's on the linkage, which is, you're right, 111.
Yeah. The coastal environment is another big chapter, because especially for Tairāwhiti, the coast is big and it's important. Where the people live, it's where the people play. We have a very directive national policy statement around how we manage the coastal environment. And we manage the coastal environment in conjunction with the Minister of Conservation as well. And we have been, we're also aware and know that it's very, very important to iwi as well, to Tairāwhiti whenua, and there is specific legislation, Ngāti Porou, around management of that. So the key things in this chapter is attempting to do that Kaiti connection back to the land and freshwater chapters, and also talk about how we want to manage the coastal environment, how we value it, and how we protect its values while also allowing our communities to live, work and play in that environment. So it is a very chunky chapter. There's overlap between this and other chapters because obviously coastal hazards are a specific issue, but that overlaps with management of other kinds of hazards as well. We've tried to make those connections and crossovers clear. I'm sure we will get feedback on that from people as well. Right. Land and freshwater chapter. So in the linkage tables, it's page 118, sorry. Now this chapter is another big one. It's driven by the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management primarily, but also the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land and it connects with all of the policy statements, honestly, because it's everything. And it's a big one for reflecting Ki Uta Katai as well, because a really big key theme of this is what happens on the land impacts the waters, and then that waters impacts the coastal environment. So it sets out the process and standards in the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management. This chapter sets the framework for all of that catchment planning that's going on alongside. So it sets the overarching umbrella that all of that stuff is going to come in underneath. So we're aiming to provide a supporting scaffolding framework here for what follows. It reflects Te Mana o Te Wai, reflects the values of the community in maintaining healthy water. And it does touch on those issues of, well, how do we improve, how do we allocate access to that water, because that is a very big issue in certain catchments and for equity as well. It doesn't have the details on that. That will come later in catchment planning processes, so communities have a lot of detailed input through those catchment planning processes, but this is setting the overarching framework for that discussion. Highly productive land sort of sits within that land chapter as well. That's talking about class 1, 2 and 3 land, where we do most of our growing and agricultural production, making sure that it's available for growing, not for houses. That's directed by a national policy statement, as I said. That policy statement might change in the future, so we're keeping a really close eye on that. It might change how much land we map. This chapter gives effect to the current policy statement, which tells us to map class 1, 2 and 3 and protect it for productive purposes.
Just a question, would there be an opportunity there in the future to bring in a restriction of forestry on, say, class 5 land?
That wouldn't...
If so, what stations are going to be added?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, no, this chapter only deals with the class 1, 2 and 3. A restriction on forestry would come in the wider chapter and through the forestry plan change work. Energy, infrastructure and transport is covered on pages 122 through to 124. Sounds like a dry topic, energy, infrastructure and transport. This chapter I really like. It's got a real Tairāwhiti flavour that reflects this place. So in a lot of other regions, this is all about transpower assets and hydro dams and, you know, big national stuff. But this context is different, so this chapter reflects that, and it's about resilience, about having renewable energy at place so that people, communities are resilient. So it's sending a direction down to district plans to enable that small scale stuff so that communities can be resilient. And it links in with the urban plan change. The transport chapter is about, or it links in with climate change and urban development. That talks to having compact urban form and good public transport networks and being able to get in and out of the region for goods coming in and out, which are all big issues in this region. Contaminated land does what it says on the tin. We do have some contaminated land, old where agrochemicals have been used intensively, old landfills, those kinds of things. The soil gets contaminated and it can leach out and cause adverse effects. This is a framework for managing that, about remediating that land and avoiding that happening again in the future. Except for very narrow circumstances where we might need a new regional landfill, for example. Natural hazards, which is page 125, is about resilience and risk-based management. So it's setting a framework where we can have a conversation with communities about here is the level of hazard, here is the consequence of that, how would you like to manage it? It's about keeping things that are sensitive to hazards away from hazard-prone areas, and speaks to, well, how do we want to manage that? And that's setting the direction of getting out of the way, letting nature take its course, using nature to protect us, and using stop banks and walls when we need to protect our communities. I found climate change, it's page 107. I'd move it up further, but we are a bit dictated by the national planning standards on how we order stuff. Historic heritage, this has got two prongs. Historic heritage of places and buildings, and historic heritage that's of sites of significance to Māori. This sets out a framework for identifying those places and protecting them through future district plan provisions. And the sites and areas of significance to Māori portion of this chapter is really important, that we want to get a lot of really meaningful engagement with tangata whenua on this one. We haven't had this level, that level of discussion yet, and we want to get in there and make sure that this reflects the wants and needs of tangata whenua. They are their places. So that'll be an important discussion. Ecosystems and Indigenous biodiversity is a big one, and that's because we've got a great big national policy statement that tells us what to do with Indigenous biodiversity, which is basically identify the places that are really important and protect them, but allow for reasonable use in and around them as well. That makes sense. Yeah. Will also be a key discussion to have with landowners and tangata whenua about that policy framework. There's a lot of Māori land that would be identified as significant, and we need to allow reasonable use of that as well as farming activities. Outstanding natural landscapes, features and seascapes are matters of national importance. This chapter sets up a framework for how we would identify them and how we would manage them in the future. So it doesn't identify them in our maps. There's criteria, and we really want to engage on that criteria to make sure we've got it right. And then maps will come in further future plan changes. So there's no rules in any of the RPS and no restrictions, but it is setting up a framework for doing that protection in the future. Urban form and development is a familiar topic for you. This is the regional policy statement review part of it, so it's not the rules and the master plans, it's the setting the framework for everything that comes in terms of zoning, ability to build houses. Its direction is compact, urban for livable communities and providing the kinds of housing our community wants. That's the end review of that. RPS, and it is just so big that it was wonderful that you did this, because I think sometimes we forget we've got a slap of paper here, but it encompasses, if that's a word, every single aspect of everything in our region, and so it should. So we should give it the respect that it deserves. So thank you for that, and also from us, thank you to the team who has done the work behind the scenes and sometimes in front of the scenes. It is fantastic to receive this and see the huge amount of work that has gone into this. Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I do want to echo my the comments about the staff and all the work that has gone in behind this. draft engagement document. I love the wording around things like, for instance, energy security. Because that provides a different lens and a different framework of conversation with our community about our own security of energy, rather than the flip side of having no energy like we experienced during Cyclone Gabriel, but we have kind of intermittently experienced all up and down Gizzy when a line goes out down in Napier at Transpower, or we had no power that time when we had like lots of snow down here and all of those kinds of things. Just all of those. I love the framework. Just using energy security as an example of the framework we've had these discussions. I like the document, and I think that it will strike a chord with a lot of people out in our community. The part that I want to take us to is on page 89, and it's from paragraph 32 to 34, specifically in regards to section 32. I wanted to ask what us bringing forward that section 32 from the time frames on page 96, which is July to October, and bringing those forward, what impact that would have on the document, because it does allude to, in the paper, it does allude to the fact that it does allude to the fact that there, when discussing option 2, that program timeframes would not be met, but it doesn't really give me any indication as to what that impact could be, and what. So the risk would not meet the program outcomes. So what outcomes could possibly it not meet? Yeah, I'm interested to know how that would affect timeframes and outcomes.
Madam Chair, I can take that. I'm just trying to find the reference in the paper. Oh, here we go, Mr. Council. In a nutshell, if timeframes or budgets, there we go, paragraph 79. If you would like to change the timing for releasing the draft RPS, move that out a couple of months, we run into the election period. So we would have to move it out more months than that. I think the first meeting this committee has after the election is December. So if we would release a draft for comment with Section 32 in December, that runs us into the Christmas holiday period, which will bring us to February to come back to you, but probably more likely June. So it would move the proposed RPS from February to June of next year. Right. So thank you for that. So the delays that we're talking about in the recommendation, because I took the recommendations to meaning, so under the recommendations on page 84, number 2, that if there were material changes to the draft RPS policy correction, so like the same February delays that are outlined in option 2 would also be the same delay time period for if there was to do a section 32. Because there are also, if we are talking about option 2 then, and that being related to doing section 32, that being the response to my questions around paragraphs 32 and 34, there are actually other positive things that have been in paragraph 31 under option 2. That delaying the release may allow for more meaningful engagement to occur with tangata whenua. The political risk of releasing a draft RPS close to a local body election is actually avoided, so it's actually a positive thing. That the draft RPS may be viewed by some of the community, that the mitigation includes good communication, like good communication in regards to losing that mobility is always a good thing. There are some positive things in that second part there. So
Yeah, I failed to see, I'm in favour of like actually us delaying in order to be able to do that section 32, because that's why I asked the questions around the timeframes and the outcomes. I'm not hearing like a clear direction about how the outcomes would be affected. Yeah, I'm of the mind to actually support strongly paragraph 31 option 2, because I don't really hear what the strong outcome, like effects on the outcomes.
Can I have a comment on that, please? Nadine?
Bishop, I suggest that given some of the uncertainty around section 30, or the absence of section 32, in order to provide an informed decision for the committee to make, the likely significant changes that will with RM reforms that will therefore impact on the RPS, that the committee at this stage receives the report and we don't take any further actions in terms of the recommendations that are just sitting there, and that will allow us some more time to socialise the RPS with iwi, as we've talked before, get that work done underway on section 32, incorporate the changes that will come through from government for whatever this new system will look like, and then we will have be better positioned to be able to provide that to the council. We're talking a 3-month delay. That's not.
Do I have agreement from the committee? Because I have picked up that everyone, especially after Alan spoke, wouldn't mind that we do best practice. Do I have agreement with the committee with that?
Yeah, totally.
All good? Yes. Okay, so now someone needs to, what are we moving on page 84? What are we moving on page 84 to allow this, Nadine? You just said it.
So the committee notes the report.
Yeah. So at this stage on page 84 is a noting report. Aubrey. Thank you, Aubrey. Sorry, my computer covers the little yellow hand and I don't see you. There you go. The floor is yours, Aubs.
Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship. Ngā mihi, Councillor Wharehinga. I too support the option 2. And thank you so much for the things that I said right at the beginning of the meeting, finally being able to see some of those things come through in the RPS. And that's just as a result of delving into what Council has done prior with iwi. So, and then awesome to hear also that going back to iwi just to check that what we've recorded over the years and we've culminated within this report is something that we will be asking iwi if they still have that perspective, if they still have those whakaaro on certain things. So that was also awesome to hear. My 2 little things, actually, they're just nitpicky things, and it was really on page 146, sorry. 146. So there is a mihi there on page 146, and it says ko tēnei taku mihi, and usually that refers to someone's mihi. So I wasn't sure whose mihi it was. It's a grammar thing, but if you could just flag that for someone to have a look at. And there's a small spelling mistake there too. It says on the 3rd paragraph, hurahi, and the word should be huarahi. So just those 2 little nitpicky real observations. Those are the only 2 things I wanted to raise besides what Councillor Wharehinga has already brought up. Ngā mihi.
Thank you. So Councillor Wharehinga, you're happy to move to note the report? I'll second that. I want to thank everyone for their contribution and their hard work. This is a great report. I'm excited about what is going to happen. I'm excited to see what our community say about it and the feedback and how we then, as a governance group, present that to all our colleagues to get all the community eyes over it. So all in favour? 1-3 carried. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Jocelyn. Whew, I feel like I need to lie down. Yes, absolutely. Jocelyn.
Through your worship, thank you, and yes, Totoko, what you said, thank you for your guidance and thank you for your leadership. I had one question from you all. We have indicated and have been directed by the council to notify in February. So I'm just seeking guidance from this group here in terms of how you would like for staff, for us, our team to note the impact on those timelines. Whether you'd like us to bring it to the yes, and
we'll put it in my CE report update to council.
Yeah. Thank you. All good.
Hey, thank you very much. Yeah. We are going to move, these are noting reports. The next report we have 381. So I am going, I know you need to lie down too. We need to go through this. Okay, so page 381, if you can just give us a high-level progress update.
Through your worship, thank you. As you mentioned, this is a noting report. Last month at the TRMP committee, we were asked to provide the committee with a high-level progress update on the TRMP program. It's really useful from time to time to do those, and I just want to thank Desiree, our program lead here, who's done a really great job, our delivery lead. Ultimately, at this stage, the TRMP program covers 4 work streams, and you'll see in the noting report a progress update on those 4 work streams, as well as some key decision dates. So those are the regional policy statement, which we've been discussing today. Freshwater, which we've also touched on this morning with our first paper. Forestry, which provides a really great update. And so there's, and also briefly introducing to you, which we look forward to taking a more substantive paper to the next TRMP committee on a 5th work stream and really part of the plan change too around the coastal environment, air, and the fringe elements of the wider, broader natural environment. So we look forward to that, precursor to next month. I'm happy to take any questions you may have, and lucky for us, we do have each work stream lead here if we do have some real technical questions. So thank you. So,
any questions? Thank you for the update. Thank you for keeping us engaged as we move forward. It is massive to fit all the puzzles together to try and get it all sorted. Alan.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, the high-level schedule is excellent. Again, I raised earlier on in the meeting, it would be just good to have an understanding of what the dependencies between the streams are. This is around risk. So it's really just sort of saying, well, the urban plan change, that's fine, but actually it relies on something else. And if there is no dependency or no risk, then just build that in, just so it's very clear. And then I think that helps us when we're talking about delaying something or moving it faster or whatever. We can see that, okay, well, that's tied with that bit of work stream there, so we need to be aware of that. So that was the only thought we had. And in terms of sort of risk, we don't have a risk update, and I think that would be helpful. And all it needs to be is green, orange, red, sort of thing. This bit of work stream's at risk. And just a little brief, it's at risk because there's a national policy statement coming out, or whatever's happened, just so that we understand
current heads up.
How. So I think that risk would be helpful just to go with the time frame. That's looking good. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any other questions or queries?
Good.
I'm Someone willing to move the report?
Yeah, I'm happy to move it. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Wharehinga. All in favour?
Aye.
Contrary carried. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, team. Thank you, Desiree. And everyone else. Uawa, Catchment Plan. Colin, you've been waiting so long. You should be getting a mayoral certificate. Here we go.
Wonderful.
Don't go now. I'm putting it down.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there you go.
Oh, goody. Uawa Catchment Plan.
Yeah, through your worship.
Process and policy direction.
Thank you. And I will hand over to Yannick, who's been doing a wonderful job in the development of catchment plans, as well as not only a freshwater lead, but our forestry lead as well. So thank you, Yannick, for a really great report. And thank you for stepping us through the progressing of the development of the Uawa Catchment Plan.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Thanks, Your Worship. Look, nothing much from me. I'll take the report as well. But suffice to say, we saw it fit to provide an update on some of the work we're doing in the catchment space. We have progressed through the National Objectives Framework process with our Catchment Advisory Group, and we have developed a broad framework plan. There's some gaps there that we're waiting for technical work to be completed in order to progress. And once we do that, we'll be taking this catchment plan back to the Catchment Advisory Group and our community to really round out, and then we'll be bringing the finished product back to this table, hopefully sometime around the end of the year, if not early New Year, along with everything else. So I just wanted to provide that update for you guys. Happy to take any questions for Carl. Thank you.
Any questions? No?
Thank you for your report, Yannick. I've got a really simple question. What is tough on page 446, a map? Purple stuff called tough. Got mud, sandstone, sand,
Oh, right, yes.
land. I know all of those figures, substances, but
well, I'm no geology expert, Councillor. I would have to go back to the textbook on geology to make a go of it.
Tuff is a type.
I think it's a type of stone.
Tuff is a type of rock made of volcanic ash ejected from a vent during a volcanic eruption. That's what my friend AI just told me.
no, thank you for the report. I'm happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Alder.
I second.
Thank you, Councillor Wharehinga. No more questions or queries? All in favour, contrary, carried. Hey, thank you to the committee as well today. It's hard work. It burns your brains when you read through that. Thank you to staff also for supporting us to try and make the best decisions for our community. I declare this meeting closed. Thank you.